Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is Resalest Remarkable Books, number 78. The first book today is How to Become an Intellectual, 100 Mandatory Maxims to Metamorphose the Most Learned of Thinkers by Nick Kolakowski, 2012. This is an interesting book. I was intrigued by the title. It's actually it's kind of funny. He's one of the things he says to know your Manet from your Monet. These two famous painters with similar names. Other advice that he gives is to quote Shakespeare sparingly. If you quote Shakespeare too much, people will think you're overdoing it. Learn to recite Romantic era poetry on cue. Take speaking tips from Winston Churchill. Learn to identify composers by their first few notes. So this was pretty interesting. Yeah, I guess I would be interested in that. I don't consider myself an intellectual, but it's an interesting topic because I like to read books. So this was an intriguing book. I enjoyed it. The next book is I'm Over All That by Shirley MacLaine, 2011. And this is an interesting book. She's the famous actress. She's been in movies like Terms of Endearment. She's actually written many books, and I read most of them, but it had been a while. She was also in Postcards from the Edge, Bernie, and many other movies. She knows about the law of karma, God's perfect justice, and reincarnation. Shirley MacLaine is strong-spirited, talented, outgoing, and funny. So very interesting person. This famous actress who has a mind of her own, and has been kind of a spiritual teacher in a way for the general public. I don't agree with all of her ideas. In fact, she was a big promoting leftist politics way back when. She went to communist China and promoted the Chinese Revolution. But anyway, she's interesting, definitely entertaining and thoughtful. The next book is Elvis and Me by Priscilla Beaulieu Presley with Sandra Harmon, 1985. So this is about Elvis Presley, written by his former wife. Very interesting book. Priscilla Presley describes her life with Elvis Presley. She was 14 years old when she met him in Germany, which was a little bit young, kind of like the novel Lolita. He was in the military over there, and she was living with her family. I guess he missed American culture. They eventually got married when she got older. They were living at Graceland, which was the name of their home near Memphis, Tennessee. They were married. They had a daughter, Lisa Marie. There was fame, lack of privacy, wealth, and other women. Las Vegas. Elvis Presley getting into self-realization fellowship and meeting Sri Dayamata, the former president of SRF. The perils of fame. Elvis's kindness. He got into they were into this. He's an entertainer, a singer, and nightlife. So there was drinking and so forth, and then he got into spirituality. At one point, he was trying to. He wanted to get away from drinking and drug taking and sex, and his entourage wasn't happy about it, and also Priscilla, although she also didn't enjoy this huge entourage that was people who Elvis was paying, they worked, they had different things, but they were always around. So he was a good guy. Too bad that he died. So, interesting story about the life of Elvis Presley by his wife. The next book is Mother Teresa of Calcutta, a personal portrait by Leo Masburg, 2011. This is a very inspiring book. Mother Teresa was an Albanian-born woman who dedicated her life to God and serving the poorest of the poor in Calcutta, India, and around the world. She founded the Missionaries of Charity, now with 592 houses around the world with 5,000 sisters. There's a good quote by Mother Teresa, quote, There is more hunger in the world for love and appreciation than for bread. Every time we smile at someone, it's an act of love. Wow, really something. Especially this line about the greatest need was the hunger for love rather than food. We're aware of we know that there has been starvation. That we know there's malnutrition in the world, But the other thing that's interesting, especially in materially wealthy countries like the United States, you have the elderly who are dying unloved, and it's just it's shameful. All the things that we do when people are dying, they should be loved. And so she talked about it, and she lived the life. One of the stories, she became famous, very famous, and she was concerned about developing pride, which it leads to people's downfall. A lot of spiritual people have gotten in trouble because of pride. They became prideful, and then they became arrogant, and they got in trouble, and they misbehaved. So she told a story where she was on an airplane, and she went into all 4 bathrooms on the airplane, and people were kind of curious, and turns out she was washing them. So she would wash the bathrooms in the airplane at that time to try to have humility, because she was worried that she would develop pride and would be destroyed by pride. So a very inspiring book. This woman who was, she lived with these she served these very poor people in India who were the poorest of the poor. But you can serve God wherever you are. Love is needed. Love is really lacking, and you can help people materially, and you can help people through love, through being kind to them in our daily lives with the people that we know, because everybody needs it. And I like the line about how when we smile at someone, it's an act of love. And this is the amazing thing about the Filipino people. They are a smiling people, and this is one of their greatest strengths. And that's why it's wonderful that Filipinos are all over the world, smiling and really helping, especially in the Middle East, which is a very troubled region. And lots of Filipino workers there smiling and really helping uplift that region and the entire world. So this is a wonderful, amazing, very inspiring book about Mother Teresa. The next book is Buddha by Karen Armstrong, 2001. Very interesting book, The Life of Siddhartha Gautama, Lord Buddha, who lived around 500 BC. He was from India, born into childhood wealth, and talks about reincarnation, becoming a liberated soul through meditation and acts of kindness. He attracted followers. He wandered around in India teaching for 45 years. Very inspiring. He had headaches with his followers, betrayal, the divine search, facing reality, encouraging those with few desires to strive, seek, and find God. Not asceticism, the middle path. Yeah, he was born into this wealthy family, into a royal family in India. His father was the king, and he walked away. In fact, he was married, had a child, and left in the night, and spent years. He got into asceticism, in other words, really not having enough to eat, being very hungry, and so forth, and doing things that were physically hard, like in the heat and so forth, and the cold. And then eventually he got into meditation, and this is really what led to his illumination. And he talked about the divine path. We don't have to really destroy our bodies to find God. We need to. It takes time, and we have to be patient. And so and Lord Buddha had a tremendous impact on the world. And he taught about reincarnation. He talked about being kind to animals, and this is partly why I think the people of India, are often vegetarian. Don't eat beef, because the cow is our second mother. When we grow up, people drink milk after they stop breastfeeding. So Lord Buddha, and of course, because of him, the people of China became Buddhist, and Japan, and many of the people in Southeast Asia, parts of India, and I think he actually strengthened Hinduism in India. So really an inspiring book, and an amazing example. He did so much for this world and helping to uplift this world in the low age that he was living in, and we still are in. So Buddhism is very relevant and very inspiring book. It shows the power of one person and how it starts with the spiritual search. We have to seek God and follow a spiritual discipline, our spiritual path, and then become a positive force in the world. Depending on how hard we work at it, our path, a very positive person, possibly. The next book is The Oldest Rookie, Big League Dreams from a Small Town Guy by Jim Morris and Joel Engel, 2001. really good book. This is the story behind the movie The Rookie with Dennis Quaid, and about the 35-year-old Major League Baseball rookie. He was signed by Fred Bean, one-time Cleveland Indian pitcher, roommate of Tom Candiotti, who also was a Cleveland Indian pitcher back in the 80s. He was encouraged by Walt No-Neck Williams, who played for the Cleveland Indians in the 1970s. So there are all these Cleveland Indians references. He had a very tough childhood. His father was real hard on him. He had marital problems, financial problems, finally making it to the show. He was from Big Lake, Texas, and made his debut in Arlington, Texas as a Tampa Bay Devil Ray, throwing heat, prizing his family. Actually, for a while, he got in trouble because, he became he developed pride. Yeah, he became famous, professional baseball player. And of course, the movie is one of my favorites, with this guy, the whole town shows up at the game, his sons, his wife is proud, everyone's proud of him, Jimmy Morris, and when he calls home and he talks with his son that he's going to be a Tampa Bay Devil Ray. And his son says, "What's a devil ray?" And he says, "It's a fish." He goes, "What color is it?" So it's a very touching, beautiful movie, very inspiring. Actually, when I saw it years ago, I was still hoping I could make it as a pitcher, Major League Baseball pitcher, but obviously that was pretty crazy. Really, so this is the true story behind that very wonderful movie, The Rookie, about Jimmy Morris. The next book is Triumph: The Untold Story of Jesse Owens and Hitler's Olympics by Jeremy Schaap, 2007. Really good book. Jesse Owens was born in Alabama in the South in the United States. His family moved to Cleveland, Ohio. He became a track star, a runner, and he won 4 gold medals at the 1936 Berlin, Germany Olympics: the 100-yard dash, 200-yard dash, 400-meter relay, and the long jump. His achievements repudiated the Nazi racist philosophy. He worked at a gas station in Ohio at East 92nd Street and Cedar in Cleveland. One of the most touching parts of this book was the story of Louis Long, who was a German sprinter at the 1936 Olympics who became his friend. And they had this. Now the story was with respect to the long jump, and what Owens, they would have three attempts when they were competing. And what Owens liked to do is he would walk the first thing he would do is he would walk the track, walk the area where they would run. And then he was informed that counted as a trial. So he was upset. He's like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And so that meant he only had two more attempts left. And on the second attempt, he fouled. He went beyond the barrier. So he had one attempt left. He was very upset. Only one attempt. And now his competitor. His competition was Louis Long. Now, this is in Germany. Long was a German, and his current German competition. And Long approached him, and he said, "Jesse, you can do it. You're a tremendously talented runner, and you can do it." And he wished him well, and it was a very positive interaction. And that affected him in a very positive way. And then on his third and final attempt, he jumped and made a tremendous jump, and that led him to winning the gold medal in the long jump. So that was wonderful here, and they became very good friends. And Long, knew that war was coming, and he kind of had a premonition that he would die. And he was married; he had a young child, and he said, "Jesse, will you come after the war that he saw coming, and will you come and see my wife? Well, my future widow and child." And Owens did that. He fulfilled that promise to his friends. So it was a beautiful friendship. Here we were on the verge of war with Nazi Germany, and this African-American man and this German guy were friends. So it was beautiful, really inspiring, that despite the political differences, which were growing. And in Cleveland, there's a wonderful Jesse Owens statue, which actually shows him wearing an Ohio State University jersey within sight of First Energy Stadium where the Cleveland Browns play. So here in the Cleveland area, he was a local guy from Cleveland, Ohio, who became world famous and really inspired African Americans, like, wow, look what we can do. And especially, and he did it in front of Adolf Hitler. And supposedly Hitler actually gave him a tree, which is still growing here in Cleveland at one of the public high schools. So this is a very inspiring story. Jesse Owens was a good guy, and they made a fairly recent movie about his life and his story. Really, really something. Wonderful history. The next book is The Game Within the Game, Walt Frazier with Dan Markowitz, 2006. This is a good book. The former NBA star who played for the New York Knicks and Cleveland Cavaliers, two-time NBA champion for the New York Knicks, shares his thoughts. He went from New York City nightlife to rural Richfield, Ohio. They called him Clyde. He was a cool dude. He used to wear a mink coat and drive a Rolls Royce. His teammates included Oscar Robertson and Willis Reed. You know, when Walt Frazier played for the New York Knicks, you know, he'd play in a game, and then after the game, he'd leave Madison Square Garden and head out into the New York City nightlife, you know, which he apparently enjoyed during that. He was a young guy, very rich and famous, and then he got traded to Cleveland. And Cleveland, the Cavaliers were playing at the Coliseum, which was in the middle of nowhere out in the country between Cleveland and Akron. And so he would do the same thing there, play a game, and he's hoping to go out into the nightlife. He'd go out in the Coliseum, and it's just cornfields. It's just in the middle of farmland. So very different experience, and there wasn't any nightlife there. Really interesting guy. It was fun having him here in Cleveland. He was a good guy. Well, another thing, he was a long-time New York Knicks radio guy, and he said over the years, only 2 players approached him and asked him for advice. You know, and he's one of the greatest NBA players of all time, and it just shows how there's such a lack of historical sense in America. And these guys here, they had a living legend right there, a tremendous resource. And only 2 guys, you know, had enough of a historical sense about who Walt Frazier was to approach him and to talk with him and try to learn from him. Very interesting book. The next book is Earn the Right to Win, How Success in Any Field Starts with Superior Preparation, by Tom Coughlin, head coach of the New York Giants with David Fisher, 2013. Well, I thought the title itself was really recommended the book because I believe he's right. You know, if you want to succeed, you have to work for it. You know, and he's talking about if you want to, in the NFL, you want to win, you got to be prepared, you got to work, and you'll be successful. So there's no mystery to it. Some people talk about luck. Oh, people are lucky. Well, that's part of it, but the main thing is, you know, work hard, be patient, and you can achieve regardless of what your work is. And I believe he won 2 Super Bowls with the New York Giants. And he promotes the values in this book of hard work, determination, and sacrifice. Of course, his star quarterback was Eli Manning. Good guy, real good guy, Tom Coughlin. The next book is 6 Years in the Malai Jungle by Carveth Wells, 1923. So this is an old book. It was good. It's a real good book. This British dude spent 6 years in British Malaysia before and during the First World War working as an engineer. He had plenty of adventures with the Malay people and the wildlife. Ants, tigers, snakes, and other insects. The old British Empire. Yeah, so this is a good historical book about, well, you know, I used to talk about white man in the tropics. That whole topic, you know, you have the guy, he's from Great Britain. I think he was English, you know, so that's his background, and he goes to the tropics. He goes on the other side of the world where it's a very different climate, a different people, and, you know, he has his experiences, which actually happened all over the world with these European empires, the British, French, Spanish, and so forth. So I enjoyed it because I spent 20 years in the Philippines, and this is a real good book. I enjoyed it a lot. The next book is A Soldier's Dream by Captain Travis Patriquin and The Awakening of Iraq, the story of America's T.E. Lawrence by William Doyle, 2011. This is a very inspiring book. It's the story of a U.S. Army captain named Travis Patriquin who learned Arabic. And he served in the Iraq War, and he developed a great love for Iraq. He immersed himself in Iraqi culture, made many Iraqi friends, including Sheikh Sattar, and helped to turn the Iraq War around in 2006 in Ramadi. Shows the power of love. This fellow, he was a military guy. He was part of the U.S. Army. And the thing is, in war, it's not just the military aspect. There's the human aspect is so important. And if you want to be successful in war, you have to win the people over. And this guy did it. You know, he learned Arabic, which, you know, actually is not an easy thing to do. He had respect for the people. He saw the good in Iraqi culture. He made friends with Iraqis. And then, including this Sheikh Sattar, who was a powerful person. And so this Travis Patriquin died. I think he was killed, but I found it very inspiring. It shows the power of one person and the power in war or in any aspect of life of making friends and of having respect for other cultures and seeing the good in them and making friends with people outside your own culture. In this case, had a very positive effect on the American efforts in Iraq, which have been extremely challenging. The Power of Love. Wonderful book. The next book is I May Be Wrong, But I Doubt It by Charles Barkley, 2002. This is a good book. The former NBA star who played for the Philadelphia Sixers, the Phoenix Suns, and Houston Rockets shares his thoughts about the NBA, fame, Michael Jordan, the 1992 Olympic Dream Team, racism, jealousy, grew up without a father. I like Charles Barkley. He has a good spirit. He's a good guy. You see him in the NBA playoffs. He's a commentator, an analyst, and he tends to get in conflict with Shaquille O'Neal. He's a funny guy. I like him, and he's funny, and he's very opinionated. He tends to get in trouble with some of his opinions, but he's honest. A lot of people aren't honest. He tells it the way he sees it. And he never won an NBA title, but, he had a lot of success, very talented guy, very interesting guy, and I think a very, very funny guy and a good guy. Wonderful book. The next book is Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem by Carol Delaney, 2011. This is a very interesting book. The author argues that Christopher Columbus's voyage of discovery to the New World, or what's now North and South America, was motivated by the desire to obtain wealth to be used for a crusade to conquer Jerusalem, in what's now Israel, or the Holy Land for Christians, which he believed necessary for Jesus Christ's return to earth and God's kingdom on earth being established. Interesting. Columbus admired and respected the Indians he encountered in the Caribbean. His challenges, now the things he faced, he himself was Italian. His challenges were Spanish cruelty, greed, and laziness. He thought he reached Asia. He died depressed and defeated. He never knew that he actually had discovered a new world, or, well, for the Europeans a new world, but this continent, North and South America and the Caribbean, which was unknown to Europeans, because and probably I think to Asians as well, because it's really isolated by two huge oceans, the Atlantic Oceans and the Pacific Ocean, especially. So, interesting book. This is his, this is very interesting that the whole idea that he wanted to make a lot of money. He thought, well, I can make a lot of money and we'll to finance a crusade to recapture Jerusalem. And he didn't do that. But and then the thing that really was hard is the people he was with. He was funded by the Spanish. So all of his sailors on his mission, on his ships crossing the Atlantic, were Spanish, I think mostly. And there was a lot of cruelty, what they did to the Indians in the Caribbean, greed, laziness. And so this was ultimately, things didn't work out, and especially when the American Indians in the Caribbean started dying in large numbers. But it's a really interesting history book about his what his motivation was and his perspective. Very interesting. Christopher Columbus, the world changed when Columbus crossed the Atlantic Ocean in 1492, and it was the beginning of major contact between Europe and America, and eventually the European conquest of all of North and South America by Great Britain, France, Spain, and Portugal, and Holland. Very interesting, very wonderful history book. The next book is The Indian Sign by Les Roberts, 2000. It's a real good book. It's number 11 in the Milan Yakovich series, this murder mystery series set in Cleveland, Ohio, with a Slovenian-American private investigator. The story involves kidnapping the sale of American Indian babies to wealthy, childless, European descent American couples. A famous fight scene in Tower City, which is now by the Terminal Tower down the bottom floor. Romance, a moral quandary. I'm actually Facebook friends with Les Roberts. This is pretty bad stuff. They were kidnapping American Indian babies to sell to white couples that wanted to have a child. So pretty bad. Les Roberts writes these wonderful novels set in Cleveland, and you get a flavor of what life is, of the geography and life here in Cleveland, Ohio, and hopefully there's been talk about making movies, so we'll see. The next book is Captive in Iran, a remarkable true story of hope and triumph amid the horror of Tehran's brutal Evin prison by Maryam Rostampour and Marzieh Amirizadeh, 2013. Wow, this is a tremendous book. The authors are two Iranian women who were born Muslim in the Muslim religion and became very strong Christians in Iran, then spent close to a year in prison for being Christians, because it was a crime, and I believe it still is a crime in Iran to be anything but Muslim. And they endured very tough conditions in this prison for the crime of leaving Islam and promoting Christianity. Very inspiring book. Actually, under Muslim law, if a Muslim leaves Christianity, this is considered, if a Muslim leaves Islam and adopts Christianity or another religion, this is considered a tremendous crime, a horrible crime. In other words, there's a lack of religious freedom in Islam as it's being practiced today, and the punishment can be death, and very often is death. So this needs to change. Islam needs to develop religious freedom. So important. So it appears we're out of time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you find a good history book to read or something else to read. Wonderful books. There's so many out there. So God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.